don't know why I decided to
I
do
don't
that.
know. That was, yeah.
Actually, I feel like I used to be on podcasts and I used to do jingles like all the time on
You
accident.
used to be on podcasts?
Yes.
This
yes.
wasn't your first podcast?
This is not my first podcast.
Tell us about that.
Well, it was when I worked at Mix Mag, and it was a podcast called On Rotation.
Okay.
And it was great. It was fun, but I would always do jingles, so I'm surprised that it's taken me this long to do a jingle.
Okay, well, so
You're like, I wish you wouldn't do that.
You should have ran this by me. No, we would love a jingle. Can you actually just like craft a real, original
Yeah, but
intro?
we'll have to discuss licensing fees, so we'll talk about that later. But anyways, welcome
This ain't
back to all
free.
this noise.
She don't work for free.
Yeah, exactly. Good learning lessons right there.
We have a great episode, some good learning lessons as well from MYRNE,
Yeah.
our homie from Singapore.
Yeah, and I love, well, you'll hear it very shortly, but we start the episode talking about how long each of us have known him for.
Mm-hmm.
And
You've known him longer.
I know. I'm proud to say I've known him longer because I actually met him in Singapore, which is amazing. Actually, no, I think we met in China, but
Yeah.
he was living in Singapore at the time. But I was saying, after recording this episode, I'm so glad to see him thriving and doing so well. He's spending more time here in the US, touring and all this kind of stuff. So it's always just nice when you meet people and then you see them a couple of years later and they're doing really well. So I'm happy.
I could not agree more.
Mm-hmm.
I met him in the heyday of the SoundCloud era, which he just talks about. And, when collectives were popping and they had a Japanese writing logo, is a old time of a time that is bygone. But like you're saying, I think that lockdown for him was a certain experience, especially living in Singapore.
Yeah.
And Asia was hit pretty hard and pretty restrictive with a lot of what people were able to do. To see him come back to the States, touring, thriving, like you said, it's awesome. Yeah. And we had a great convo. I don't know. He's a very, very well-spoken guy.
Very stylish. In case you're not watching, he's very stylish.
I suggest putting this, if you're listening to this right now, you just put it on YouTube.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. He's got a lot of sauce. And this is a great episode. Looking forward to sharing this one.
Yeah, enjoy. Okay, I always like to, what should we talk about in the beginning? Well, I was going to talk about how you and I have known each other really randomly for a really long time. I was trying to think what year it was that we met. It was probably like...
He remembers.
Do you remember?
Talking about Shanghai?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was 2017 at the International Music Summit, Shanghai.
Incredible memory. That's amazing.
Wait, you were on the panel with me.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We were talking about
like rising Asian artists,
rising
right?
Asian artists.
I know. I love that.
Are you guys still rising?
We are.
I would say he's still rising. I'm not rising.
Have you risen
I was
yet?
just on the panel. I was helping the panel exist.
Rising 88, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
No, but I love that that's how we met.
Yeah.
And here you are in LA with us now.
On another panel.
On another
Pretty much.
podcast panel. I love that. When did you guys
that's cute.
first meet? You remember?
We met in 2018. He
Okay.
came over to the States and we did one of your first shows, right?
Yeah,
in LA?
it was, I think, it was at the Terragram Ballroom, a Daruma
Yes.
showcase.
Yes, Daruma Showcase.
Yes, and I also crashed on your couch for one night.
That was fun.
Aw.
Yeah, we went to Pho. That was like one of the first times we hung out. We went to Thank You Pho in Koreatown. Korean owned, but baller, by the way. Just want to say.
Butt baller.
Wait, so was that your
Koreans,
first time coming to the US at that point?
Yes, that was 2017, 2018.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Around just everyone in that scene, I guess. Everyone I knew, they were going to Brownies parties, and I was like,
sounds about right.
2018 was a good time because that was the 2017-18 is when we first started to kind of branch out more and started doing like, festivals and like incorporating a lot more artists from around the world. And obviously MYRNE was one of them.
I was like, I'm giving myself a pat on the back because I remember when I was putting that panel together, I was really kind of like going in the dark of finding like artists in regions that I didn't know a ton about. So look at me. I found you. And I was right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Rising Asian artist right here.
Hell yeah. Also, I do want to say, I think that you actually may have come over in 2017.
Yeah. I think it was 2017.
Yeah, I was working at
shortly
Fool's Gold
after.
at the time. I remember we were talking about it.
Yes.
But
Wow.
yeah, we had a good crew. I wanted to shout out Yatep.
Glendale. Glendale was the spot to be.
Oh my gosh.
That was memories. Yeah.
He has a cult following. It's only increased because like back then, you know, he was getting his
Yeah.
bearings.
Yeah.
Now it's just full blown cult.
Dude, yeah, I mean, I
Love that for
knew
him.
he was destined for greatness. The moment I laid eyes on him, I was like, "You're gonna be great."
Yeah.
Also, can I crash on your couch?
Yeah,
too? Like,
that was the important part.
Oh
Is
my
like you
God.
got to find the couch to crash on when you come to LA.
so
One of the
Yeah,
reasons
yeah.
why I'm so close to the Brownies Lemonade guys, just so you know, is that I slept on Kush's couch for like 4 years. So very
That will
important.
bring you
Yeah.
closer with someone for sure.
Whether you
Existing
like
on
it
their
or not.
couch
Yeah.
for a long time.
You know, it was funny because, you know, at that time, I guess we could say that future bass was kind of at its peak.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's kind of interesting. I was talking about this. We were talking about this on another episode. It was kind of becoming a derogatory term. You know?
It's a slur.
Right. And I think the last big show I think we did together was Hard Summer in 2018.
Yeah.
But it seems like from that point on, kind of you've musically gone in a totally different direction than those
Mhm.
roots from that scene. Why don't you
Mhm.
tell us about that a little bit?
Sure. I think 2018 was kind of the cusp where everyone I knew was trying to write an album. So I was like, I'm gonna do an album, but I'm not gonna put like 10 future bass tracks on there. Like I wouldn't do that to my listeners or anyone. And
How
then
kind.
we had just started working with Ultra at the time, so I had access to these incredible songwriters, incredible musicians, and I thought I've always been a very musical guy. Let me try and do something that that's not super electronic, but also not super indie and organic. So I kind of met in the middle, started going down this very down tempo, chill roots, which I've always enjoyed, I guess, listening to. I think the one big red flag back in the day was I never listened to my own music. Like I'll upload it,
Whoa.
but I wouldn't sit on a plane or a bus and listen to MYRNE,
Right.
And
Why is that?
it was just a very fatiguing sound. It's like it's always these big drops, and I guess that fatigues the ears a little bit. Like for me, at the time, I was just diving into acts like Bonobo, John Hopkins, Tourist, and that was the stuff I was listening to on repeat. And then I had this kind of struggle internally because like why aren't I listening to my own music? So I think naturally from there, um, it was so interesting right around that Hard Summer show because I was on stage jumping to like 160 BPM with Wookie. We're making these crazy 4 on the floor edits.
Yeah.
But then on the way home for the festival, it's like, oh, let's put on some John Hopkins. Let's listen
Chill
to some
stuff.
let's listen to some Brian Eno.
And that
Yeah,
was kind of the time when, to that point, like, people like Rufus and Bob Moses and a lot of these artists started to kind of, I think, emerge really as a viable touring act or like a big, like, main stage thing where it's like you could have something that was, melodic and deep and dark, but also be massive, And I think we changed a lot. I think people got away from the EDM stuff at that period of time, as you mentioned.
fair.
Yeah.
I don't know if that correlated with how you were feeling, but
No, the shows were always great. Like the shows I was playing with you guys, they were just rowdy and fun. I never thought that you could make a touring living off of chill down tempo music until I started attending these shows. Like I go to Australia a bunch, and recently I caught a This Never Happened show with Salt and Shepherd, The Youth, and I think there's one song that I really like. I think it's called Assassin by Salt and Shepherd. If you play it on Spotify, it's just very down tempo, very chill. And I saw these ripped Australians just like moshing to it. This is like deep
Which
house,
they do to pretty
They
much
kinda
everything.
add anything.
So
melodic house, like 120 BPM. They're just like, yeah, and they're doing like the ooh thing. I'm like, yeah, this is tight,
at least we're not the only ones that
meeting
have
of the
embarrassed
world.
us with the woo woo thing as a culture.
Oh, I love that. I
Universal
don't know.
sign of love from the crowd, I
Yeah.
think.
Damn.
As they do.
Man.
Well, so you said you have always been kind of a musical guy. So before you even had this realization, I'm curious what got you into making music, because it's like, were you listening to a bunch of future bass artists and that's kind of why you felt like that's the music you wanted to make initially?
Yeah, no, I think I was born to be a musician. So my name's Manfred.
Yeah.
From Manfred Mann, the Earth Band. So
Sing the song. Come on, sing the song.
Don't
Kidding.
get
I won't put you on the
she
spot.
goes, going walking down the street, singing do what did.
That's
Thank
pretty
you.
good.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
So my dad, I think my dad was the one who was always playing records in the house, had an old stereo on. So I think one of my first experiences with music was, listening to disco or Earth, Wind, Fire, lots of rock, Isley Brothers, Deep Purple,
Mm.
Michael Jackson.
And where did you grow up?
In Singapore.
Nice.
Yeah, so born and raised, and I've always they weren't musicians themselves, but they would always surround me in music. My dad was a great singer,
Oh.
and I think maybe through middle school or high school, I was in a band. I was in a concert band, so I was playing the trombone. So and I was
Love.
also learning piano at the time. So I always kind of have these musical influences in my life, but never really considered, oh, maybe I should try making music
Yeah.
until I was 18 or 19.
Nice. And so what was like that first entry point? For a lot of people, it's like, Fruity Loops
Yep.
or DeVault was here. You got like a DJ controller. What was your
Right.
entry point in terms
Oh
of?
man, it was watching these blurry Tomorrowland live streams in maybe like 2013, 2012
Yeah.
Mhm.
on this like $100 Samsung shit top, this laptop that wouldn't even close.
Oh my gosh.
So I was watching, I think, Deadmau5 or Avicii or Eric Prydz, Joris Ford, all these, progressive guys.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I said, that looks super simple to do. Let me try it out. So I downloaded FL Studio, and in 2 weeks I was like, this shit is hard as, I don't know what to do. So I just kept at it. And then I started exploring communities online, like SoundCloud.
Yeah.
Found a lot of friends. Started making, trappy, like hip hop influenced beats.
Yeah. Who were some of your early friends? Do you remember?
Wow, back in the day, well, people like,
Yeah,
Andrew
throwback.
Luce, AWOL Talk,
Yeah.
Luca Lush, shout out Luca
Okay.
Lush.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the whole crew of just like beat makers. There were a lot of circles, I think.
Mhm.
And I thought, like, oh, I'm from Singapore, I don't know where I fit in because I didn't really grow up anywhere in LA.
It really is so great. Like we've had so many guests have a similar story where SoundCloud really was the moment where they found their people, and to
Mhm.
hear that someone in Singapore had the exact same
Yeah,
experience, I
yeah.
mean, it's great. It
Man,
just
I would
shows.
I would upload my tracks at like 3 a.m. Singapore time just to trick people. Like, oh, this kid's from LA.
Yeah, right.
Or, like I would have
You're thinking ahead.
I would have automated tweets and memes just ready to
Wow.
go at like 4 or 5 a.m. I would
Nice.
be sleeping, but I would be tweeting online, and people like,
Well,
where's
that's a
this
really
guy's
interesting.
based?
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really interesting thing because I mean, I was gonna ask. Growing up in Singapore is so different than growing up in the U.S.
Yeah.
or anywhere kind of in North America because I think that extended to the SoundCloud community that we know and love. But did you feel far away? Like, did you feel disconnected?
No, not at all. I think I was
Yeah.
alone at home,
Yeah.
like not too many friends, but online it just felt like I was there.
Wow.
And this was a few years before I even thought about coming to, America or LA.
Yeah. So did you use social media as a way to kind of identify the different scenes and kind of feel like up to date with what was going on?
Yeah, pretty much. I was also being super annoying on like Twitter DMs. It's like, hey man, I got some new music for you. Like
Yeah.
if you wanna. So I would send it to every single DJ I knew.
Hustle.
So I
Yeah.
feel like some people out there have really embarrassing DMs of mine just floating around.
It's okay. I'm sure you're not the only one.
No,
Don't worry.
no.
But you did a lot of collabs with people too.
Yes.
And that was kind of
yes.
a way that you got your name out, I think, with
Yeah.
people in the scene, right?
Yeah, that was kind of the method at the time. I think
Mhm.
music came and went so fast. The
Yeah.
trends kept on changing. I felt that was the only way to kind of put your name out there. Like,
Yeah.
just flood. Like I was uploading like a track a week. I
Oh, wow.
think. That's
Yeah.
at the peak. Yeah.
Well, I think at that time was when there was that shift where it used to be that like quality trumped quantity, but it kind of flipped in that SoundCloud era where it was like quantity then informed your quality.
Yeah.
Like you saw people getting much better in real time
Yeah.
because you could just like
The
delete a
feedback
you could
loop,
delete a
too.
song
You
if
could.
if you wanted to just hide your history
Right.
too. So
Yeah.
that was a new thing for artists when they had control of their distribution that way.
Mhm.
But it's interesting that I was thinking about this the other day because you mentioned Daruma, and it's like all of those collectives and all of that. There was so much. They made so many compilations, right?
Mhm.
And you got to imagine all the different artists from all the different walks of life that were on them. But like in the streaming era, I mean, those are cultural artifacts that could just disappear at any time. An account gets taken down. You don't
Yeah.
renew your Bandcamp subscription, like whatever. It
Oh.
just could be lost.
Yes.
So I almost wonder, like, who are the people that are going to catalog these things for the future? You know?
I think there will always be hoarders of music just, sitting on things like YouTube.
Mhm.
The thing I learned was nothing gets taken off of YouTube.
That's true.
It's on there somewhere. You're looking for
Someone has a copy of
some
something.
2003 Aphex Twin, illegal 120 kbps rip. It's on there. It's on
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yeah.
With like, movie 0001 or something.
That's true. That's so true.
We forget that
Yeah.
YouTube is the best music platform.
Pretty
You know,
much.
for
pretty
a
much.
lot of those reasons, at least from a catalog perspective. But for you, do you feel like, do you reminisce about that time, or like what are your feelings about like kind of that time in your life?
Only good things, I guess. But if I could go back in time, I would probably not release a track a week. I would want to, be a bit more certain with the output and a bit more careful, I guess, which I was not back then.
Yeah, well, we've heard, I mean, one of the benefits of SoundCloud in that era that people always bring up is the comments and how you could get like real-time feedback from people.
Yeah,
And even
yeah.
like when the drop, it's like this drop really hit with people because they're like, oh my God, like right there. I'm guessing, the benefit of releasing so much music was maybe you got some of that feedback to then
Kinda,
incorporate, right?
kinda. But
Maybe, maybe not.
I don't know. I don't really listen to feedback. I'm just
He doesn't even
That's
listen to his
also
own
fair.
music.
That's also fair. So was there a point
Yeah.
then when you were, getting this momentum on SoundCloud that you
Mhm.
felt like you were onto something?
Yeah, I think it was. I think through an email. I was uploading lots of remixes. There was this one remix of Jack U I did,
Mm.
just for fun. Threw it up there. Didn't really get too much traction. I mean, like 10,000 streams in a year or something. And then the A&R for Mad Decent at the time, I think Paul Devereaux reached out, sent me emails like, "Hey, love this remix. Do you have anything else you could show us?" I just thought it was a phishing email, so I just didn't reply.
Oh no.
And then 2 weeks later, he hit me. I was like, "Hey man, did you get that email?" I was like, "Oh shit, this might
You're
be
like,
a
for
real
real?
thing." So I sent over some stuff, signed an EP to Mad Decent in 2015,
Wow.
and kind of things just started picking up from there.
Okay. So the moral of the story is check your emails
Yeah.
and respond to them.
Respond to
to
Paul
your
Devereaux
emails.
email.
Reply to your Paul Devereaux emails.
Yeah, Paul was a big part of my life, at that time too. I was working at Teamwork, but yeah, he always had his finger on the pulse. So
Man, that's great. Like finding kids from Singapore. I mean, he was very big in like, South America at some point. I think he was backpacking or he was just searching for a lot of music out there.
yeah,
And I think that's a great, crate digging skill.
Yeah.
dude, he was one of the original people that was like real crate digging. Like he had just like an impressive Bollywood vinyl collection,
Crazy.
and he would do these
Whoa.
mixes of just Bollywood.
Yeah.
That
So
sounds very fun.
yeah,
Whoa.
I mean, you gotta. We mentioned Diplo and also Paul and all the guys at Mad Decent they're very cultured people, and so what just MYRNE saying this experience here alone, it's just like they were looking in places that other people maybe weren't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I just think that speaks to having a global sense, which is something now I think that is just standard. Whereas in the past, you really had to still kind of go outside of your comfort zone to find people in other countries and scenes, Now it's like I think more than 50% of the listening audience in America listens to non-English music.
Yeah,
Whoa.
but that's also an interesting thing because I feel like now that it's such a trend, right? It's
Right.
like people are looking at like Korean music and being like, oh, there's a lot of talent there. And we're like, yeah, we know. Like K-pop is a big deal already. But yeah, to look in the still yet undiscovered places, I think is an important thing.
What's the music scene in Singapore like? Obviously, it's like a huge international.
It's just me.
multicultural- It's just
Just me.
There's like 2 people in Singapore. I'm one of them.
Very
well, I mean,
small.
there is some truth to that. I
Exclusive.
mean, there
The-
are.
There's some truth to that.
So you well, this is an interesting dynamic, right? Between when you came to the United States and you started touring, but someone from Singapore, you have your scene, which you were doing really well in, I'm sure. But then I'm sure the goal was to get to America to tour.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, just expand the listener base. But there is a very long-standing tradition of dance music in Singapore. It's a bit more techno-y, a bit more ambient, lots of electronic. And then there's like new kids like me who are making beats on a laptop. And I think since the past 5-6 years, the sound has gotten super polished. And I'm excited, I guess, for dance music out there. But
Cool.
but lots of iconic clubs. There was Zouk going for a long time, like 25 years. And they would, I think, the previous owner would come to Ibiza, and just stay for a couple weeks just to like soak up the sounds of the beach, and then go back home like, okay, we should book this guy, this guy, this guy.
Yeah.
And then people like me would go to the clubs like, oh wow, this feels so exquisite and foreign and international.
Yeah.
And that kind of shapes dance music culture back home as well.
Yeah, and they did a Zouk festival, right?
Yeah, it was an iconic thing.
Yeah.
They kind of do it every year.
Yeah, I was gonna say people might not know that because they probably know of Zouk now via Las Vegas, but not know
Yes,
that it was
it
actually like
was a
an
Singapore
Asia
thing.
super club back in the
Yes,
day,
yes.
long before the Vegas edition existed. So you said that Singapore has like a long-standing electronic history. I'm
Hmm.
curious. I actually have never heard that before.
Oh, we just had our first boiler room ever.
I love
and
that.
Nice.
and they had a lot of local legends who were doing it for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
But it's always been very housey, techno-y, disco even.
Where do you think that comes from?
Uh, People party, people go out in Singapore, people listen to
Yeah.
music. I think also the club scene in Singapore is also very complex and
Mm,
big, because we used to have clubs that close at 6 a.m. or like
wow.
sometimes like just raves.
Hmm.
And yeah, kind of just people are just looking for a cool sound to find home, find their own people, their own tribe, and there's a lot of that in Singapore.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting because I think for some reason you don't really think about Singapore having like a long history in
Mhm.
electronic music specifically. But then if you think about it a little bit more, Singapore is like such a global hub,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Of so many people who I think are like very well traveled and like go
Yeah.
many places around the world. So it's probably like those people have gone other places
Yeah.
and maybe brought that back, just like the Zouk example.
Pretty much.
That's what I would assume.
Yeah.
You
But
also
that's
said
really
that when you
interesting.
were in Shanghai, when you guys met, you went to
Hmm.
a boiler room there with someone we've heard of.
So it was this up and comer dude called Skrillex, and he was throwing a boiler room in
Yeah.
Shanghai.
Yes. That was a
Um,
big
and that was
deal.
that was one of the first boiler rooms I attended, and I thought typically it'd be very heady, have like cigarette in the mouth kind of music, like techno or house.
Yeah.
But then we walk in, and then this guy starts playing Bangarang in a boiler room. I'm like, this is awesome. If you replay the video, you can kind of see a guy who's just slightly faded and just like wobbling in a green shirt. That's me.
Oh my
Right
God.
Green
behind,
shirt,
I
dude.
bet we can find you.
right
That's
behind the
amazing.
mascot. I was just like, what is going on? It was like
Whoa.
2, 3 a.m. But that was a surreal time. That was
Yeah.
very fun.
Yeah,
Um,
especially because you just mentioned you did this Jack U
mhm,
remix. It was
mhm.
probably around the same time, right? And
Yes,
then
yes.
yeah, just just a cool just mixture of all of that, I'm sure, for you.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
When you came to the United States and you started touring and stuff, like what was the biggest like kind of difference between your expectation and then what actually you experienced?
Oh
With
wow.
like festivals or just that first run when you came over
Yeah,
pre-pandemic.
yeah. I th- I didn't really have any expectations because I mean, looking at like my story and where I've come from, I've just had no idea what was gonna happen next.
Hmm.
So I came here. Um, I had a lot of fun touring, and then some cities we would tour and sell maybe like 15 and a half tickets.
And a half.
And a half. No, someone will buy a ticket and be like, I don't want to see this guy, and then sell it off. So that was one of the first runs, like early on back in the day, and I wasn't discouraged. I was just like, okay, I just gotta work harder,
Yeah.
put more music out there. But the biggest difference, I guess, was people knew the music a lot more.
Mm.
When I would used to DJ back in Asia or in China, you would have to kind of mix in, like a commercial sounding song just to like keep the crowd going, keep the alcohol flowing.
Hmm.
But here, kids don't really care about that. They just want to have a good time. They know the music. They've obviously been
Mhm.
studying it. So that just feels nice as a selector for sure.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, because I'm sure I want to talk about kind of what happened during the pandemic for you, but now you're touring. You just went on 2 runs.
Yeah,
So you were with Dabin and Jai Wolf.
yeah,
So Dabin, I guess, first of all, that's one where you show up and everyone knows the lyrics.
yeah,
Like you can
yeah.
tell
Oh,
they've not only studied, they've done the extra credit.
me
And,
too. I'm in GA singing, dude.
his Asian fans, they're used to doing extra credit, so they overachieve with his music.
So
But
nonchalant with that. Hey.
no, I mean honestly, like I have immense respect. I've already mentioned this before, but I have
Mhm.
immense respect for what Dabin has achieved, just because I think as an Asian American artist, he's doing a lot of the stuff that like I think we wanted our own Porter Robinson, or we wanted people to
Yeah,
emulate, that model
yeah.
authentically. So, what was it like being on tour with him?
I've always wanted my own Dabin. Like that's my idol. But we've been friends, I think, for a while now through Facebook Messenger. I think he was in Canada, I was in Singapore, and we were just chatting, sharing music. And he wanted to do like a headline, like a big celebratory headline run, this year. And it was some very iconic venues like Mirage, Red Rocks, Shrine, Bill Graham. And he was like, "Do you want to come and play some music?" I'm like, "Yeah, hell yeah," because we have a song together and we've been known each other for a while. So it was just like a it's one of the first things I did after COVID, because in Singapore, COVID went on for an extra year.
Mm.
It was just not a lot of live events last year. So we couldn't really travel. We had to wear a mask everywhere. So it
And
was
you were
still.
in Singapore during
I was in
pandemic
Singapore for
times?
2 years, just vibing,
Yeah.
just hanging out.
Yeah.
And then this was one of the first things I did when I came back. Yeah.
Exciting.
It was
So you did play Red Rocks.
We were supposed to play Red Rocks. Everyone was pretty pumped, and then we get there, and there's like 50-mile-per-hour winds.
Oh shit!
no.
They couldn't set up the stack because it was just like swinging.
Oh my
Yeah.
god!
Oh gosh.
So unfortunately, there was a fire broke out at the ridge, so
Right.
they had to cancel the show.
That's
Yeah.
wild. I mean, that's
Yeah, was
really
that-
the elements are.
Unfortunate.
I
yeah.
know. Sometimes it gets kind of crazy over there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because when I went to
Yeah.
Red Rocks in April, it was like clear. It was
Yeah.
really nice,
Yeah.
but only 2 days prior it was like straight up snowing, like during the
Mm.
whole. So it was like they weren't sure if it was gonna be just a snowstorm or not. It was like
Mhm.
just a game time decision. You can only
Mhm.
imagine how hard it is to adjust. But
Yeah.
so you also were here for a lot of stuff working with Jai Wolf.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that you were not only working, doing the tour with him, but you've been working on his records. And
Yes.
So tell us about that, because I don't
know.
know if that's new for you, being in like a writing capacity or
Oh
helping
no,
someone.
I've been producing or co-producing or just being a musician. I was a session musician for a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So been in rooms plenty of times. My first ever dance music cut was RL Grime, I Want to Know. So
Nice.
that was the first ever session I came in. I was in LA crashing with like 10 other dudes,
Yeah.
the friends I was telling you about. We had one bathroom,
Oh god.
clogged all the time. But I get a DM from RL. I was like, "Hey, are you in town? Do you want to work?" I'm like, I'm gonna get a place,
Yeah.
So we did that, and a few years later.
Wait, let's talk about the RL Grime one, because I don't
yeah.
know if a lot of people knew that about
Oh.
your career.
Yeah, I Want to Know. That was one of the most fun things I've worked on because I've always had a very nice melodic background.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, sure, he's famous for his hits, like the trappy hits, but
Yeah.
he's also a very accomplished producer. So when I was working with him, I was just bouncing off his ideas and kind of just elevating things a little bit. So yeah, we had a song that, was called I Want to Know. I think didn't come on until later, and then was on his album, and then the song kind of blew up.
Was that a song that you listened to of your own?
Yeah, yeah, once in a while.
The one and only.
the one future-based song.
When you hear a song like that you've contributed to in that way,
Mhm.
but it is mainly attributed to RL Grime,
Mhm.
like, how do you feel about it? Do you feel like it is your record, or what's the feeling on
Not
that?
really. I'm just like a midwife, I'm just bringing things into the universe that wouldn't be there
That's a lovely analogy.
love
I love
if
that.
I wasn't there. But no, I love the record, but it wouldn't make sense under like a MYRNE project or things like that. So how I view co-production is just a way to elevate things or just bring them into existence.
Yeah.
Like, even I don't know why it's so looked down on in dance music, but go to any Beyonce record or Taylor Swift record, and it's like
Mhm.
5 producers, 10 lyricists, and they're all just coming together to just make the best version of the song.
Mhm.
And if that makes for better music, then I don't really have a problem with that.
Yeah.
That's
Nothing
awesome.
wrong with collaboration. I think
No.
it stems from a lack of understanding most of the time, right?
I think a lot, yeah, that too.
Yeah.
And a lot of kids who make dance music think that since it's so in the box, like all you need is a laptop.
Mm.
You don't really need anyone else, which I think is also a misconception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Valerie and I have talked about it, where I think if you get hung up on this like ghost producer thing, or that there's somewhat of a flawed ideal that it has to be solely an individual who makes their own music and it's just like purely their creativity. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just a naive way of looking at it. There's just not a lot of, unless you're thinking
Sure.
about a singer-songwriter who's literally there with just a guitar.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
but I'm sure a lot of people even there have some help with the lyrics.
Sure.
Yeah.
Not everyone can be Calvin Harris, I think.
Not yet,
No.
It takes time to become Calvin Harris, I
It
think.
does.
Hey, even Taylor Swift, contributed to
Hey.
one of his tracks, uncredited.
Fair.
But
Fair.
yeah, I mean, so working with Jai Wolf on this, this really important cycle for him, what has that been like?
I think this is probably the closest I've ever worked with an artist, like kind of also philosophically, musically,
Mhm.
because I think I'm, producing just a bunch of tracks for the album, and all the stuff that's coming out, it's a very refreshing take on the Jai Wolf sound. which I was a fan of growing up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been fun. We just have sessions all day. We're just like sitting and talking about life, and then putting that into the music, and going back, and doing something else like rock climbing, and then going back, and just like putting out bangers.
But yeah, I think those are good. It's good. It's good to be in that capacity also with creatives. Just like
Hmm.
just I don't know. You don't even know what you're going to talk about and what's going to inspire you. But
And the whole process as well. There's a lot of things I can't do with my own music that I can when I'm working with other people for their own projects.
Like
So
what?
it's well, nothing legal. I'm just talking about drum processing or something,
I see.
or some artistic creative things that I don't really want to do.
Yeah.
But I would be willing to explore for other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's also a nice creative exercise, I think, for me.
Yeah.
so when you said that you've looked up to Jai Wolf for a while. So
Mhm.
is there like a weird sort of is there like an idea of who Jai Wolf was in your head, and then who he really is as a person, and that you kind of come to terms with it, or
Oh, I mean, well, I met him for the first time in Singapore, 2017.
Mhm.
Um, I thought he would be lamer in person, but he's like a cool guy. So,
Like,
yeah, man.
you're way cooler than I
I
thought
was
you
like,
would be.
yo, this dude got style. This dude's good looking.
Yeah.
I thought he was some nerd.
yeah.
But yeah, he's great.
You
So
both are in like your hot boy era right now.
Oh, kinda.
Kinda.
Look
Well,
at
thank
that.
you.
Look at that. Trendy tactical vibe.
What
We
is
love it.
what has the touring been like? Just with Jai Wolf and Tsunami and all the homies.
Oh, it's been super fun. I had a few runs with Devault. I had a few runs with Evangelia, Casbo. And also I think this is my first ever bus tour.
Ooh.
So living on the bus, I kind of got used to it. It was very
Well, if
nice.
you've lived in a place with 10 guys and a clogged toilet, I think
Oh,
a bus is
dude,
not too
Kind of like
bad.
not kind of an
Yeah,
upgrade.
I was also in the Singaporean military for 2 years, so that kind
Oh.
of built up. Well, everyone has to do it.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
kind of a required thing.
Yeah.
So sleeping on a bus with AC, dude, this is a palace.
So you were fine.
I was
Wow.
fine.
Yeah.
The most fun I've had was actually hanging out with crew and seeing how the stages were built every single day. There
Yeah.
were some times we would do like 8 shows in 10 days, and
Yeah.
they would do it, no problems asked,
And
but no questions
sometimes-
asked.
Yeah, and sometimes the venue is smaller, so they have to
Mhm.
accommodate.
Mm-hmm.
They have to just scale it accordingly.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy how many people operate to make one show happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that kind of inspired me a little bit too.
Yeah. That's really cool. And now, I mean, you brought up being in the Singaporean military, and I actually wanted to go back to COVID times where you were in Singapore.
Yeah.
Did you go back because of COVID stuff, or like kind of
Kind of. Yeah. I wanted
yeah.
to be with family, and
Mhm.
also the last time I was here was right before COVID hit. I think it was February 2020.
Yeah.
Playing a set at Exchange, I think. And I also wrote 2 tracks. The good friend of mine, Manila Killa, and Dash was actually taking pictures of us in Malibu. We were going up the mountain. We got a little lost for some reason, and we took some pictures. Came back down, and I was flying the next day. And I get a text from my mom. It's like, "Are you gonna take the flight home tomorrow?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" Yeah. And then she said, "Well, there's a flu going around in
Wow.
China. Can you put a mask on?" I was like, "I don't have a mask."
Wow.
But I picked one up and I went home, and then a month after the airport's closed.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was right on time that you went
right
back home.
on time. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that like? Because I feel like, I mean, in the beginning, I'm sure we
Mhm.
all kind of thought it was somewhat temporary, and then you kind of
Mhm.
realize you're back home for a little bit longer after being in the US for a while. Like,
Mhm.
what was that like for you as a musician, starting to
Oh,
get some momentum and stuff?
no,
Were you
2 weeks in, I was on Indeed.com, just thinking what to do. But I think it was a very depressing time for a lot of people. I get most of my not just income, but also just like fulfillment from touring and playing
Mhm.
shows. So without that, I was aimless,
Mm.
like a lone piece of wood drifting in the ocean.
Oh.
And I thought it would come, go through after a couple months, but it kept going. So I actually did a bit of co-production work
Mhm.
back in Singapore, working with some friends of mine, people like Nathan Hartono, Jasmine Sacco, Gentle Bones, these crazy, crazy musicians from back home.
Mm.
And I think I did that for a year, and then another year went by, and COVID was still like Asia was
Yeah.
pretty badly
Yeah.
hit. And Singapore wanted to be extra cautious, so there were actually checkpoints on the highways during the peak of lockdown and we have ID cards with our address on it.
Mm.
So they would pull you over, and if you weren't going in the direction of your home, they'd be like, "Oh, what are you doing out here? Because you're not
Wow.
supposed to."
Yeah.
So it was pretty strict. We were kind of at home for 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did that affect your creative process at all?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, because I get most of my inspiration just from, meeting people, having experiences, or a lot of walking, a lot of traveling. So when I couldn't do that, I had to find other sources, and they weren't like really good sources. They were like video games. So I don't know.
Make do. Make
It
do
was
with
it
what
was
you
a
got.
it was a
Can
rough
relate.
time.
Can relate.
Yeah.
I mean, for a lot of people, everyone reacted differently to that time. There's some
Yeah.
people who creatively thrived, in that setting, because they're like, oh, I can finally sit down and just focus. You know,
Yep.
other people have different sort of work styles
Yeah.
where you need to be out and active and around people, and that kind of influences, your own feeling about your craft.
Yeah.
But do you think that during that time it gave you that full permission to maybe transition into
Yeah.
where you are now?
Definitely. I think also COVID for a lot of people was the first time they turned on like the front-facing camera. I can't remember a time back in the SoundCloud days where you had to do that on Instagram. It was always
Yeah.
huge fisheye shot, like as many people, like nothing with videos, nothing with like selfie cameras, nothing with like talking to a camera.
Yeah.
So I think COVID was a time personalities kind of shone through.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Whereas in the SoundCloud,
It's a nice way to put it.
I'm being very polite right
Not
now.
shenanigans.
No, it's a good
or-
way to
Yeah.
Well,
think
because
you're right.
not to cut you off. Sorry, people have feel some type of way
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
About that becoming the case.
Yeah, I get it. But I'm a determinist, so I don't think there are like things that should be the case and should not be the case. It's just what happens,
Yeah,
and that's like what naturally we're tending towards. But yeah, I think I tried my hand like streaming and like producing like online. But I think that just wasn't really for me. I like to be mysterious with my craft and not tell my secrets to anybody.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like you do give the more mysterious vibe.
Yeah.
Which is great, because you talking about like working kind of behind the scenes on some of this other music and with people. I'm sure people don't even know that.
But I mean, if someone comes up to me, asks me a question, I will respond and not
You're
be
like,
a
I won't be
dick.
that mysterious.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough for a lot of people that had more anonymity
Anonymity.
and thank you.
Anonymousness.
Anemone.
Anemone. And just sort of anyone who had any sort of mystery to their project, I think felt like they needed to become more of a first person or a personality, and there's just some people that just like kind of refused, and I've definitely seen it affect people's careers in different ways. There were other people that stuck true to like, I'm not going to release any music or really do any of these live streams until things open up, and then they waited, and then they were rewarded by that like scarcity. But I think it was just like a tough time to kind of determine what your next move was, because like you said, you didn't even know when you could drive down the street.
True.
So it's like, who cares about a record rollout or whatever.
So that was 2020. In 2019, I put out my debut album, In Search of Solitude, which had a good blend of emotional kind of future bass and like cinematic tracks and like just electronic hits. And then the little EP that I put out with Manila Killa was actually none of that. It was more housey, like 2019. Housey, and well, there was 2020, just the start of 2020 before COVID. It was a bit more housey, more down tempo. We were both singing on it.
I love that.
We were trying different things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the time over COVID kind of gave me opportunity to kind of refocus, see what kind of music I would write that I would listen to.
Yeah.
And so naturally that came along.
I love that. And also tell us about your friendship with Manila Killa, because sounds like you guys have known each other
my twin. I mean, we're both from Southeast Asia, trying to make it. But he's definitely had a crazy following, all around the U.S. Like didn't he really recently do Hidden in the Clouds, like Manila? So I think that was like a big like homecoming.
Yeah.
He's also
very on the nose.
He's also on this crazy DJ run.
Yeah.
That I think he's having a lot of fun of. He's actually gonna take my bunk on the the Jai Wolf tour.
On the bus.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Just
on the
hanging
bus.
out.
Yeah,
Twinsies.
it's hanging out.
Hanging
So
out.
I made the sheets extra crusty for him.
God.
Oh, God.
He'll have a great
Valerie's
time.
already having enough trouble picturing the.
Yeah, too much, too much.
But yeah, no,
Oh,
we had Chris here, Manila Kill on the pod
nice.
with Chrome Bodies.
Yeah.
So yeah, he also, went through his own kind of metamorphosis. I think in the last couple of years musically. I think it's great. I think it's great what you guys have tapped into, individually, and it just seems like everyone's kind of a little bit more open-minded and trying to get to that place where the music actually represents who they are rather than having a blapper
For
150
sure.
BPM edits, which you were amazing at making, by the
I
way.
was a king. I still do. Sometimes.
I was like, who knows? Maybe that'll come back in your repertoire in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to drop a lot of hip hop in my sets because I used to be a top 40 DJ in Singapore. For a bottle club that has since closed.
Oh, wow.
Not of any fault of my own. I mean,
No.
I was doing fine on the music.
Yeah.
But it was one of those cases where some rich guy who probably owns like an oil field would come up to you and be like, "Yo, can you play some Jay-Z?"
And you're like,
and I was like, okay. I was like on Serato at the time, so I would download like 5 Jay-Z songs, just like drop them in. And then he would hand me like a bottle of Ace of Spades or something. And I was 20, so I was like, what is this? Champagne? I'm not going to drink champagne. So I just left it at the club.
Like, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
Is that how you started DJing?
I started DJing to kind of just get by, make money.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a lot of like top 40 gigs, lots of hip hop or fun kind of gigs, lots of opening sets all over Singapore. And at the time, I was releasing music on Mad Decent. And so there was this strange disconnect. Like I think slowly over time, some people started to see my name on billings. I'm like, I want to go see MYRNE. And then you show up to a MYRNE show and he's just playing like T.I. and Lil Jon for like an hour. And that was when I realized like, okay, I cannot just be a DJ. I'm a DJ / producer now. I'm double barreled.
Right.
So I had to.
Which is the hard part, I feel like, of the Asia club scene, right? Because like you were talking about before.
It's very tough, for sure. Especially the younger kids. There's no way you could have like a 50 cap show just for yourself. There are no venues like that. A lot of it is within clubs, and you're usually working with promoters who are, advertising a certain style of music that's not you. So I think it might be rough for the younger kids back home.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, I feel like it's an interesting balance because I feel like when I spent time in Asia, you can feel the excitement of the kids who like are seeing these big stars and also like homegrown stars.
Yeah.
Excited about their music, but then the club experience is totally different. Yeah.
I mean, well, it's just because, like you were saying, like there is a real path for artistry in this scene, where in other areas of the world, it's more of nightlife or lifestyle accessory. It's not really like, people don't see DJs as like touring entities in that way unless they're from Europe or imported.
Yeah, pretty much. Like they will still come up to you with like song requests or even I think someone did that to Diplo in like Singapore. Like, can you play blah blah blah? Like not a Diplo song.
He's like,
and I was like, what's going on? So yeah, there's still that psyche.
But he knows, like he's one of those people that has done it all. He understands the value in that too. Because if you come from the clubs and you grinded it out in the salt mines of DJing top 40 clubs, and that when someone comes up to you and wants to hear a Jennifer Lopez song and they got $40 in your hands, you play it immediately.
Yeah.
You take the money, you transition out immediately, and you did the transaction
pretty
over.
Much,
but
pretty much.
And I think that you hopefully don't lose sight of that value too. I mean, that's still serving the people.
Yeah.
Like, you get up there and you just want to play what you want. You clear out a dance floor.
It's different. Yeah. I think when I was kind of getting introduced to dance music, I thought DJs were just like, part of the staff, like the bar staff, or waiters, or doormen. They were just part of the crew. You didn't really go there to see the DJ. So that was kind of what I grew up on.
Yeah, that is an interesting because like that's how it used to be in many ways, in different ways. I think.
Now I'm
like
standing on the
world,
table. Now I'm jumping off the table. Now
like,
I'm
"It's all
jumping
about
back
me
on
now."
the table.
You just made me think of
Jumped off again.
A lot of jumping.
I mean, DJs love elevated surfaces. But you just made me. You just made me when you said that the DJs were also employees.
Yeah.
You made me think of this bar. Jose knows what I'm talking about. This place, Butter, in San Francisco. The DJs were the bartenders. So like
gosh.
everyone who was bartending on any given night
Like at
could
the
also
same time?
yeah, they could all DJ
Whoa.
too. So someone would come up and do like 2 or 3, 4 songs, do like, you know,
They go back to
and
the
then someone
bar.
would go get a drink,
Damn.
and then they tag out, and then someone
Whoa.
would go DJ, and then they'd. It was amazing. I just
Nuts.
thought that
That's
was
so
the coolest thing.
chaotic. I've always thought bartending would be my worst nightmare job because it's so
Mhm.
chaotic already, just
Mhm.
being a bartender.
Yeah.
So if you toss some DJing in there as well,
True.
You're just like, hold
chaos.
on one second, I gotta go play "Don't Stop Believin'."
Yeah.
And then
I
like
got your
peek
order.
out.
Hold on, I'll be right there. Oh my god, chaotic.
Stickiest turntables ever.
I think
Yeah,
that
good
there's
point.
something kind of like, I don't know. I think that there's something cool about that, though. It's like even more in service of the
Yeah.
people, which I think is what DJing it should be for. Like,
Mm.
I think a lot of people. I would actually love to get your thoughts on this. Like, you know, we built up DJing so much that like literally I saw Steve Aoki on a crane, like a construction.
You're like physically high up.
Yeah, we
Goes
did
in the
have.
stratosphere, just caking people.
It could not have been more above the people, right?
Yeah,
And not
yeah.
no shit at Steve. I think it was just like it was MTV Wonderland. That was the point of that experience. Was like how crazy can we take the DJ thing?
Yeah.
But now as we're seeing, like you mentioned, Boiler Room, like
Yeah. Now everyone's on the floor.
right eye
Yeah.
level,
Eye level.
everyone's
Physically.
around.
360 just surround.
Yeah.
I think the next kind of phase would be those Roman death pits where the crowd's above
I was gonna
and
say
the
underground.
DJ's
Yeah.
on the floor. So everyone's like looking down.
And they're
and then
throwing things at the DJ.
if you play the wrong song, it's tomatoes, you know? But if it's not, it's
Honestly,
like
I would love to see that.
doubloons or something.
I honestly, I think the DJs need that.
Yeah.
To be honest,
my
But
God.
Humbling, you know, just
Yeah, humbling.
yeah.
do you like the return to the floor with the people and like kind of having
Yeah.
because I think almost now that might get overplayed, but we're still in this kind of
Sure. I think it's also connected to several other things. Like being a DJ is also kind of a selector. So when I was on the Jai Wolf tour, every night would be like a totally different set. Like sometimes I'd play, sometimes I play really deep and weird. Sometimes I play, just Taylor Swift edits if I'm in, Omaha, Nebraska.
Wow.
But it was always a fun time because I'm always looking at the crowd. I was like, okay, they're vibing with this. I think they would like this song. Or if it fits, oh, maybe they'll like this MYRNE song.
Mm.
And so that's kind of what I think we're going back to with, with the popularity of boiler rooms and these almost like, nameless flyers, which I think Brownies has a huge part in, making the scene.
for better or worse.
Yeah, just be like question mark, back to back,
Yeah.
question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also the rise of parties without phones and recordings, I think is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so exciting, interesting times.
I mean, I love hearing your perspective because I feel like you have like been around the world literally and seen the dance music scene in so many different ways.
Yep.
I'm curious how you feel now. Do you feel more connected to the Western side of music, or like when you go home, do you feel more at home there?
I think every kind of like Western-facing Asian country, like especially Singapore, some parts of Southeast Asia, you're always like a cultural chameleon. Like normally I talk like this back home, but then when I'm with you guys, it's a bit more American. Things like water,
Water.
water. But for me, I think music, like the kind of music that I'm really into now, like house or melodic house. I don't think it's tagged to any one kind of place. Like it's big, sure, it's big in London, big in Europe. But it's also, grabbing a foothold in Asia, like kind of on the undercurrent here in the States. So yeah, I feel like it's getting a bit more international more than ever.
Yeah.
You're the poster child for this next wave,
You're one of two
Oh.
people from Singapore, so
Hell
there's a
yeah.
lot of weight on your shoulders.
Shout out. The only other person in Singapore, my mom,
That's it.
No,
Just
actually,
two.
my best friend Brian lives there. Shout out, Brian.
Okay, there's
he
three
doesn't.
people.
There's 3 people. He
Three
moved
people.
there.
That's
Nah.
it.
He just-
No,
Oh,
he didn't.
he's not from
I
there.
didn't see him on the roster,
Oh my gosh.
Uh,
Okay, so what are you working on now? What can people expect from you?
So I've worked with labels for, pretty much all my life. I think I was with Ultra for my first record. I was with Astroworks for the past 2 years. And I think now in the first time I'm pretty much independent. So we're
exciting.
very exciting.
a free agent.
I'm a free agent.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
If you're listening, A&Rs.
Bids coming right in, dude. With the green screen with the auction going on.
He's on Indeed. No, I'm just kidding.
Are you excited about this indie chapter?
I think so.
Yeah.
I also really think, no fault to anyone or whatever, but I think independent labels, especially independent labels that also curate events and also kind of build artists, tend to do a bit better than majors in many of the cases when it comes to dance music, especially. But if if you're in pop, if you're in R&B, there are a lot of benefits to being with a major.
Yeah.
So what you're describing, sorry, that made me think about, it seems like that an evolution of the SoundCloud collective thing.
Yeah.
Because it's like basically like you just described, Daruma had this little collective / label. You got to play a show with Brownies and Lemonade.
Yeah.
So, but then a lot of people went away from those collectives because they needed a label backing. But now people are like going back to
those collectives. Yeah.
It's
I
like a
think also
community
the
thing,
reason
yeah.
why Daruma, kind of just settled after a while was you really need a full dedicated team, with like 4 people on full-time salaries managing the label.
Yeah.
And at the time, I think it was just kids like me,
Yeah.
with a SoundCloud Unlimited subscription.
Yeah.
They were just trying their best to annoy DJs, like, hey, new compilation just dropped.
Yeah.
So now more than ever, it's becoming, taking the both bits from both structures, like the major structure, like you need an A&R, you need a label manager. And then when it comes to the collective part, like there's usually, like a big DJ or a big act that's also overseeing the whole thing.
Sure.
Kind of what San does with Bitbird, or, Above and Beyond with Anjuna Beats. So, or, RL with Sable Valley even.
Yeah.
So I think those things are coming back. for
Yeah.
sure.
And
Exciting.
people don't really want to admit it, but like the collective model in which every artist is equal is just not really the way that business works, a lot of
Yeah.
times. And I think that, people just find it out in time that like there are going to be kind of tiers to the artist and
Yeah.
within a label, whether
I've heard a lot of horror stories about that because collectives, like there's obviously some bigger acts, there's some acts that are smaller, and people fight about that all the time, I guess. Like, yo, dude, you put me on track 3 of your 40 track compilation,
yeah.
where this guy who's never even toured is like track 2. Like, what's going on?
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you have those disagreements, and I guess without the proper infrastructure, like it's also hard to mitigate those issues.
Well, I think that we look back on the time that when we met and then the whole SoundCloud thing, and everyone keeps mentioning it because it did feel like a very special time for artists.
Yeah.
And hopefully, right now we're living in that time again that something like that is kind of happening. Maybe we don't see it yet in that same way, but I'm sure there's young people who are meeting through Discord or other, other areas where we weren't, that didn't exist, and then they're having their own heyday right now too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's nice. It feels like we've heard this sentiment before too. It's like these kind of independent labels or labels that are built up by artists because they trust the curation of that person and that they bring other artists up, that community feeling is coming back. So it sounds like there's probably music that you're working on.
Yeah.
Plans for shows.
Well, I'm
stuff.
definitely planning a lot of stuff for next year. I feel like release a couple of things this year. The music direction, I mean, if you're taking a listen to all the new stuff, it kind of combines all the things that I loved back in the day, like chord progressions, like very euphoric, melodic things. Now just with a different
Mm.
tempo, and that's I've been listening to a lot of my own music at home.
Oh, he's finally listening.
exciting.
Yeah.
Oh my
hell yeah.
gosh, that's great.
Every time I post my Spotify, top 5 artists for the past few years, it's been me. Just you gotta.
That's honestly I'm so glad you told us that because I feel like that's something that people, I guess, you don't really talk about because it just sounds silly to be like, I listen to my own music or something like that.
Yeah.
But that is really important that you realized that you weren't into listening to your own music and there was something that needed to change because of that. That's great.
I would be really embarrassed back in the day if people put my song on at the party. Like, just turn that off. Turn it off.
Which is, that's an important reaction to like realize that you're having for whatever reason it is.
Yeah.
So
now you're like, turn that up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Put that on loop. Oh, you might actually like this
Don't
track
play
instead.
anything else.
Yeah.
So that now the newer stuff coming out and you're playing it and sharing it with people, is that like kind of forming how you're thinking about your live shows and your DJ sets and seeing the reaction from that?
So
way?
I've also been playing live from back in the day. Like, I went on tour in Manila Killer. I was opening, and he had a live setup with MPCs. I had a live setup with like a piano. I think the one thing both of us realized, like, we fucking hate playing live. It's just too many wires. Also, I wasn't really good at, like, I was a great producer, but I was a bad live set curator for Ableton.
Okay.
Because I would have no idea how to set up my projects. So there was this one time I was performing in like 90-degree heat in Las Vegas, and I had 3 Omnispheres open, which is a plugin, and like 3 Serums, and my laptop was just choking like 90% CPU.
Oh God.
And obviously it crashed.
Oh God.
But I was pretty good at stand-up, so like 5 minutes, it was just like, all right, yeah, I mean, you guys come here often, and trying to back everything up.
The biggest test of them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after a few incidents like that, I was thinking, you know, the set I'm trying to curate isn't really a very on-time audiovisual experience. It's more of just, you know, it's reading the crowd. It's playing something different every night, and that's the kind of stuff I have fun with.
Yeah.
So I'm a DJ now, you know, just
Good.
I think that a lot of artists felt compelled to, or like pressured to do a live set.
Yes.
Because they're like, oh, I'm
just good to try, right? Give it a shot.
again.
It's
It's
interesting.
everyone
experiment.
needed to go through that experience. I think collectively.
I agree. It was also because I think one of the biggest like heroes from our time was like people like Odessa, you know, that had a huge drum line, a huge cinematic experience, and everyone thinks like, my set needs to be a movie.
Yeah.
But
Or
for a lot of
Worlds,
people,
right?
yeah, or Worlds, especially Worlds. So a lot of people thought that, but you really don't. I guess there's no right or wrong way to curate a live experience that's true to yourself and your fans. I think for me, that's just DJing.
Yeah, and I think for Porter, as an example, like I think he was better at being a live show curator than maybe a DJ,
Yeah.
and I think that he identified that, but like that doesn't mean that everyone else needed to make that leap, you know?
It's also prohibitively expensive.
Yeah, that too.
But also like when you're in like a support capacity or whatever, and you have to also have that kind of backline set up and all that, it's just like
stressful.
Ultimately, I think the fans just want the music to be good.
Exactly.
So if it comes out through CDJs,
you
know,
or you know, on iPad or something, you know, I would DJ with an iPad. I would kill.
Teach their own. I
would kill with the, you know, iPhone 13 live setup.
Yeah.
The minimal setup, very minimal.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. I feel like it's cool to hear kind of the backstory of where you're at now, because I feel like it sounds like you're in a really confident and comfortable place.
Yeah.
As an artist.
Yeah.
Which is always a nice thing to hear.
I mean, if you see any pictures from the tour, I'm just smiling.
Yeah.
Looking like a jackass, just having a great time playing, you know, the stuff that I love.
I love it. Yeah. Well, I can't wait for what else is to come. Excited for this next indie
chapter. It's kind of open-ended.
Yeah.
But I'll figure it out.
I love it.
Yeah.
We'll be there for it, and we're honored to have hosted 50% of the population of Singapore here on this podcast.
Yeah. What's up, Mom?
What's up, Mom?
We're gonna have some disgruntled Singaporean fans listening, being like, "Hey, I'm here."
Maybe there's like 10 people.
Okay, maybe. We'll have to go back and check our numbers. But shout out to Icon Collective Music Production School for having us. Yate, Jose on the ones and twos.
Go on.
Oh, look at the shades.
All right, ready? Cheers. Cheers to MYRNE. Reunion.
Oh, cheers. Thank you. That's all this noise.